A lot of people my age, when they look at experts talk about this issue of people not having kids anymore, they say, well, what's all the fuss about? The answer is pretty obvious. People don't want to have a family because they can't afford one. They just say that it's an affordability thing, but poor people have more children.
You're right. A lot of them will say, no, I don't want children because I can't afford it. Well, I can't afford it if I want to have a lifestyle which is now open to me. I want to work. I want to be a professional person. I want to have a sort of lavish lifestyle.
Fertility rates have been declining for over 100 years now worldwide. Many academics and researchers warn that if these trends continue, we might be heading for what they call population collapse. But is all the doom and gloom warranted? And could low birth rates maybe even be a good thing and just what we need? Today, one of Toronto's best economists offers some perspective on this matter. So birth rates are falling. Why?
Oh, it's a tough question to start off with. Certainly, one of the most important reasons is the improvement in the status of women. The way the world formerly was, the function of women was to produce babies, and that's not what the function of women is today. Women are entitled to have as full lives as anybody else, and for many women, having a full life, a professional life, they thought it was incompatible with having large families, and for many of them, incompatible with having any children. And that idea has gradually spread around the world. And so there's been less decline in the birth rates in Africa than in other parts of the world. But even in Africa, birth rates are falling, and certainly precipitous falls in China, India.
The UN says the world's falling birth rate is an indication of the increasing control that individuals, mainly women, are able to exercise over their reproductive lives. Is that the reason why?
That's absolutely true.
So the more control women have, less children.
I used to be in an institute that did surveys of this, and it was just fascinating. These surveyors would ask women, how many children do you think a family should have? And they always said, the average, always said about two less than they actually had. So if they had 10 children, they would say 8. And if they had 3 children, they say, well, 1 would be fine. Well, they didn't want to disavow the children they've got. They didn't want to say, I don't love my children. I love my children, right? So they didn't want to say that. But maybe we'd be better off with just a little fewer children than we've got now. But interestingly, that response didn't change even when the families were quite small. If they had 4 children, they said, well, a family could get by with 2.
Yeah, but why is that though? They want more. Is it more freedom, less strain on financial resources? Why?
Yeah, more freedom, less strain on. Look, it's in many societies, sort of pre-modern societies, the worth of a woman. What's a woman worth in the eyes of other people, but maybe in her own eyes too? Is how many children does she have? That's the metric. If you don't have children, you failed as a woman. That is no longer the metric of worth. I mean, women have professional careers. They have work lives. They're creative. They're productive. And we also now have a lot of interviews with people in rich countries, with women, saying they don't want any children at all. They just don't see children as part of their life. They have lots of ambitions, and that does not include having children. Something that would have been unthinkable a couple of generations ago.
Why do people think falling birth rates are the worst thing ever?
When birth rates fall, the proportion of elderly necessarily increases. Interestingly, when people think that the increase in the proportion of elderly is a result of death rates falling, of people living longer, that's not true. There's a whole lot of demographic theory behind this, but overwhelmingly, the main cause of the change in the pyramid is declining birth rates. And that means that there are fewer working age people, essentially, to support a larger number of elderly. And so we've got a big problem of how are we going to support this increasingly growing proportion of elderly people. That's one reason why people don't like to see it. Another reason is a growing population to some people seems to be a mark of a dynamic society, a society with new opportunities, new investment opportunities. And see, my response to that is that those is not to dismiss them. Those are serious problems. For sure, they're serious problems. But they just pale in comparison to the specter of having continuously growing populations.
Are falling birth rates a bad thing?
Well, that's controversial. I think falling birth rates are what's going to save us. I think it's a very good thing. There are certainly a lot of people who think it's a bad thing. Falling birth rates mean almost necessarily a decline in the rate of population growth. Population growth is generated by the gap between birth rates and death rates. So the birth rate, more people are being born than dying, the population grows. Eventually, population growth has to stop because otherwise if the population just keeps growing, eventually you get standing room only, which is impossible. And what we really want, I don't think there's any disagreement that what we really want is low death rates. We want healthy lives. We want healthy, long lives. The only way to maintain low death rates, therefore, is at least eventually to have low birth rates.
What would life be like with fewer people?
Well, look, when I was a young person, when I was 55 years ago, the world had about 3.5 billion people. Today it has 8 billion people. It's more than doubled in my lifetime. Not that long ago. I remember.
How old are you now?
I'm 80. I'll be 81 in a couple of days. So when I was 25, 30, I don't remember exactly, but the world population was 3.5 billion. It was fine. I mean, it was, nobody was complaining that we don't have enough people.
In the 1800s and 1900s, there were a lot of predictions that when we get to even 1 billion, there's not going to be enough resources. But we keep pushing and pushing. We're at 8 billion now. And the lack of resources, is that even true? Like, look at the obesity rate, for example. You've got one person with more food than you need for 2 people.
Yeah, I don't think the problem is the lack of resources. I mean, eventually it's got to be because the Earth is finite, and to the extent that we use up non-renewable resources, eventually they'll be gone. But to tell the truth, so far we've seen no sign of that. We've been discovering resources faster than we've been using them. Now, logically, that's got to end, but we've seen no sign of it so far. The Chinese realized this a generation ago, and they decided to be very heavy-handed about it and to require families to have no more than one child. And that seemed to be, to outsiders and to a lot of Chinese, to be a violation of human rights. It's somehow one of the most important human rights is the ability to decide the size of your family. And
you're talking about the one-child policy.
Yeah, the one-child policy. They're not doing that anymore, but they don't need to, because people on their own are deciding, not because the government has, imposed some rule on them.
Will retirement ages go up?
You saw what happened in France when they tried to raise the retirement age from 60 to 62, if you can imagine this. Riots in the street. But yes, they were absolutely correct to raise the retirement age to 62, that they're going to have to raise it some more, 65, 70. I think the norm is going to have to be 70 or so forth. Now, that's controversial too, because there are some jobs that people just wear out, the physical jobs, construction jobs. And maybe there's got to be different retirement ages for different sorts of work. But, people are healthier, they're living longer.
Should people work that long, though? I mean, there are a lot of people, John, that don't like their job. And also, they work week in, week out, and they don't have much money left over.
Yeah. Well, here's another argument. I mean, you're asking such good questions, and we're not sure that we've got the answers to them. But, one response to your question that would support the idea of your question is that there's not going to be much work in the future, because artificial intelligence and robots and stuff are going to take over the work. My view is that's not going to happen. We've had enormous technological change over the last 200 years. And has it destroyed jobs? No. The unemployment rate is as low as it's ever been. It's created new jobs. It's destroyed old jobs, for sure. Like all the jobs that were associated with horses. Those jobs have all gone. all the jobs of typists, stenographers, those have gone. But they've been replaced by other jobs, and I think that's what's going to happen. So maybe we'll get to a point where people can make their own decisions more. People who are tired of working can stop working. People who are not tired of working can keep working. So here's an example. It used to be that the required retirement age for professors in Ontario was 65. They got rid of that. There is no required retirement age for professors. You can retire at 65 if you've built up enough stake in your pension, but you're not required to. So I'm way past 65, and I keep doing it because I love it. So what's wrong with that? What's wrong with giving people the choice?
Will we also be paying more taxes?
Yes, we will. We certainly will. If you've got a smaller proportion of working people and a higher proportion of elderly, one way or another, the working people have to support the elderly. And there's many, many different institutional mechanisms for making that happen, but taxes are one of them.
You know, a lot of people my age, when they look at experts talk about this issue of people not having kids anymore, they say, well, what's all the fuss about? The answer is pretty obvious. People don't want to have a family because they can't afford one, right? But that doesn't stop people all around the world. I mean, I did some research about, based on the GDP per capita, the poorest countries in the world. So let's say Somalia, for example, they have a GDP per capita of just $310, but their birth rate is 6.4 per woman. And then you've got Mozambique, 460, 4.71. And then when you look at the other side, South Korea, Norway, and Luxembourg, which is like 130,000 per capita, it's always one per woman. They just say that it's an affordability thing, but poor people have more children.
Yeah, so that's not a very good theory of why people have children, is it? I mean, you put your finger on it there. I mean, there's some people who say, well, having children is like a consumer good. The more income you've got, the more income you've got, the more cars you buy. The more income you've got, the more steak dinners you'll buy. The more income you've got, the more children you'll have. That's a theory, but it's completely wrong for the reasons you just said.
Do you think they're lying when they say that they just can't afford a kid?
So let's take people in rich countries, in Germany, where the birth rate is way below replacement level. And you interview people and you say, do you want to have children? And you're right. A lot of them will say, no, I don't want children because I can't afford it. Well, I can't afford it if I want to have a lifestyle which is now open to me. I want to work. I want to be a professional person. I want to have a sort of lavish lifestyle. Having children is not compatible with that. So in that sense, I can't afford it.
Now, people with that, let's say people in developing countries or poor people, do they have more children because it increases the odds that one of the kids will make it and lift them out of poverty?
Before the Second World War, and for hundreds of years, as long as we know before that, death rates were very high. And for the population to survive, birth rates had to be very high. You'd have 10 children, but 6 of them would die. And
when was this?
Oh, that's the normal human condition everywhere in the world. When you've got life expectancy of 30 years instead of 80 years, that's what happens. Is most of your kids die before you die, and so you need a lot of children because lots of them are going to die. Let's say you end up, for example, with 4 surviving kids, 2 of them girls, 2 of them boys on average. One of the boys is ne'er-do-well. So one of the boys survives and takes care of you, and there's no Social Security or pensions or anything. So you've had 10 kids, and there's one available to take care of you in your old age, right? And so that's one way of putting it. Another way of putting it is, since death rates are so high, the population simply won't survive unless birth rates are high. So that's what the situation was like, really before 1950 in the developing world. Then what happened after 1950, I mean, roughly, is that death rates fell precipitously because public health measures were introduced cheap public health measures were introduced around the world, and very quickly death rates came down. birth rate stayed high because that's a cultural matter. They had developed a culture in support of 10 children. Right? So we had this period of a generation or two in which you had birth rates of 10, 10 children per family, and death rates of 2 per family, and therefore 8 surviving. And that was what we called the population explosion. And that was the period in which I started studying this stuff. And we were alarmed, terribly alarmed. There was a book written, Paul Ehrlich at Stanford, called The Population Bomb. It looked like it was a disaster. But it took a while. It took a generation, 2 generations, for the cultural norms to change. And since the kids, I think what happened is that since the kids weren't dying, they didn't need to have as many children in order to have someone support them in their old age. Plus, poor countries started to develop pension schemes, social security schemes. The Chinese are not producing enough children for their population to grow at this point. Amazing.
So that's a good thing.
Oh, I think that's a good thing. Although lots of people, the Chinese are not so sure.
You mentioned the population explosion and stuff. Isn't that part of what always happens? We sound the alarm and get scared about literally every problem, but it seems like no matter what happens, we just have a tendency to survive.
I don't think we can always count on that. Maybe the population is taking care of itself. What about global warming? I don't see global warming taking care of itself right now. You were saying, which I agree with, that maybe we're not running out of resources. Possibly that's right. I'm not sure about that, but it's possibly right. What we are running out of is the capacity of the natural ecology to act as a garbage dump for all our garbage. And that's creating climate change and other ecological changes that could kill us, could raise the sea levels. Now, you're saying we've always found a way to deal with that. I hope we do.